And we are online, man.
Well, I've got it ready to roll, but we'll just trust that it's actually going to work and we'll go straight into it. Welcome to the 15th of January. It's the dog days in the NBA, and despite the fact that my life's pretty chill right now, I feel like I'm in the dog days and I'm about to get blown out by your takes, man. How you been? You been good? Yeah, you been enjoying?
Well, you know what? It's funny actually. I've been unwell as well. When did we last record? Last week or go
Yeah,
online
last
last
week.
week? Yeah. So I've been like unwell the last few days too. So I don't know. It's just been a shaky start to 2024, right? Which is probably some sort of reference to like the Lakers or something, right? You know.
I mean, you can segue to a lot of different teams at this point. Um, But I mean, which team did you have that you wanted to talk about? Maybe that's the easiest segue there.
Well, looking at maybe we can start with today. Had a bit of highlight, right? Dame Lillard hit that game winner for the Bucks, right? Against the Kings, and then the further articles came out was that Mike Brown had some gripes about the refereeing. That feels like on that topic, right? Let's how many averages per day do we have of gripes about referees? That's about 25 gripes per day, right? And then Mike Brown brought his laptop out as well, and I'm not sure what that actually proved, but sure, okay, cool. But actually going back to that game winner, man, which is ironic that we actually delayed this stream a day, because obviously yesterday we were going to record, but you weren't feeling great, and stuff like that. But is that I was thinking we haven't seen a Dame Lillard game winner for a while. That was my first thought, right? And then today he hits that one, right? Since it's come to the Bucks, I don't think he's had a game winner. Not
No,
in that
he had one
sense.
in his first game. I'm pretty sure
Not.
he had a Dame time.
But I guess my thought here was like, do we prefer a superstar like Dame Lillard? Last season was averaging like 31 points a game. All right, it's down about 25 a game. Which is right there in the middle of where everyone sort of all these sort of mini players average nowadays. Do we prefer Dame Lillard in Portland, where he was that hero every week and we talked about him every week? Or do we prefer, as a fan, him as a sidekick, but, he's more successful? I don't know. What's your preference?
I would I would say that answer is going to be easier to commit to once the playoffs roll and he's actually in them. So, I mean, look, his Blazers tenure is quite long, and he's been with the Bucks for about 2 months. So let's just pump the brakes a little bit. But
But I'm
um,
also saying that besides this game winner today, which was like real fortunate timing for this take in a sense, I was almost like missing Dame Lillard. What happened to Dame time? I didn't see this for a while.
I think the Bucks have some teething issues from their trade. Um, you look at what happened in the offseason, and everyone kind of collectively felt who they added, Dame Lillard, they were the clear favorites. And Boston kind of came out of nowhere, adding Kristaps and Drew. And I think people realized it's like, okay, cool, that's a good idea, or in theory that can work. But it's clicked for Boston really quickly, and it hasn't clicked as easily for the Bucks. But the irony is they're separated in the loss column by about three or four. So I think there's a real interesting narrative currently with the Bucks in which people perceive them to be underperforming or not living up to expectation, but they're right in contention with Boston for
Mm-hmm.
being the best team in the East, and their record also runs parallel with the West. They're one of the top teams in the league currently, and we all collectively agree they're not great defensively and they're still figuring out it offensively. They may make some moves at the midseason deadline, but if nothing else, time is going to help this team assemble a little bit better. And I think Giannis is still figuring out how to play with someone else who can also score 30 points on any given night, which I believe is the first time in his career he's had that.
Yeah, look. If this is a Bucks take, the Bucks continue to be dangerous. They're second in the East right now. Dame, they're at the playoffs, like you mentioned, that's when he makes his money in that sense. Yeah, so I'm not sort of arguing that point at all. I guess I'm sort of saying it's been nearly half a season now, I guess, in a sense, and it's like I really almost forgot about Dame Lillard. Yeah, that's the point. But maybe a greater aspect to that is if we actually look at this season, which we also lost the whole season with Ja Morant. Yeah, so Dame now is a sidekick. Yeah, Ja Morant, lost this season due to suspension and now injury. Steph Curry's having a down year by his standards as well. Clay's no longer Clay, right? He ain't gonna go Splash Brothers in mode anymore and drop what I don't know, 30 points in the quarter sort of situation. here's a question for you, man. We're halfway through the season right now. I feel like there's been a whole lack of highlights this year. What stood out to you this year? I really can't think of something that has from a one perspective highlight point like, oh my god, that Steph Curry, step back three, like, or that Dame, 40-footer a clutch shot, or Ant Edwards posterizing someone, Ja Morant posterizing someone. I feel like it hasn't had those highlights this year. I don't know, maybe I'm just not watching enough. I don't know, basketball.
Yeah, maybe you need to get onto the NBA top 10 and start enjoying some
Well,
stuff.
you
So
tell me what's the highlight this year? What sticks in your
I
head?
sincerely, if you watch, go pick any Spurs game that Wemby was playing, and
Yeah.
there's something weird and ridiculous that he's doing. And he's been quite clip worthy all year. I think
Yep.
Giannis has had some incredible stuff as well. Like the Wemby block against Giannis was like a very high caliber play. He's off the backboard as well. I watched that game live. That was a great game to watch. He was really encapsulating. I think even like the in-season tournament, I think took a little bit of the heat at the beginning of the season. There were some nice close games then. We're just seeing a decline currently. I think it's this isn't the first time that we've had this discussion. January gets in that weird slot of a lot of games have been played. People start getting injured now, or they start resting because they're 40 games in, they're halfway through the season. We start talking about all stars and we, compare people and we try to figure out who's there. Um, I think that there's been their moments.
So, so you tell
I
me. So, in your head, the biggest highlight, 40 games or so in now this season, was Wemby blocking Giannis.
if I had to pick one right now without really going through a lot of stuff, I'd say some of the Wemby stuff that we're seeing is crazy. Even Jar posterizing Wemby as well. Like there's good stuff there, man. There's good stuff.
It's funny. I guess in part I wanted to talk about Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies, which we sort of moved on to now in a sense. Um, Now, obviously, we just found out like this week that Jar's out for the season. Desmond Bane's gone as well. Memphis are now in full tank mode. Yeah, there's nothing more to it. All right, let's be clear. Memphis are in tank mode. All right, they're not going to say it, but they got 14 wins, and they probably would have loved to have half of that right now. Yeah, 7 wins right now, because right now there's some awful teams in the league, including the Pistons with 3 wins at the moment, the Wizards with 7, the Hornets with 8. Okay, and the Spurs with 7 as well. Like, there's just some really terrible teams this year, and some teams obviously have reasons like development and young rosters and expected to be down in the standings. Other teams like the Hornets, you could argue that they've had injury issues and so on, but the Hornets have always been the Hornets, right? But the catch here is, since Memphis now is in tank mode, let's assume Memphis can get a top 5 pick next in the upcoming draft. All right, I think they're going to be a huge threat next season when everyone comes back healthy. And that's our fingers crossed. I hope everyone comes back healthy. Yeah, we haven't seen Steven Adams for nearly 2 seasons now. Yeah, we almost forget who this kid Brandon Clark is, right? And he was like, he was in that conversation with like Nick Claxton and those up and coming sort of big men that could jump and block and rebound and just, sort of fill that sort of spot. Marcus Smart is out right now as well. Desmond Bane's out. They're just everyone healthy. The Memphis Grizzlies healthy and a top 5 pick. I think they're going to be crazy good next year, potentially.
They definitely have enough time to set themselves up for that. So, you look at their timeline the past couple of seasons, they go against Golden State, give them a bit of a run for their money, who eventually go on to win the championship. And everyone collectively felt like, okay, they're ready, they're coming. And then they kind of flame out last season, but lost Steven Adams by that point, and lost Brandon Clark by that point. So you could start to see the wheels turning off. And Jar had his mini suspension. And then
Just
we
distractions
have,
galore last year's season, wasn't it? We talked about that,
and
that as
then
if this team can win with so many distractions.
And then this season, it's obviously like failed to ignite, and then it looked like it was about to go. And then obviously this Jar injury out of nowhere is not a great sign. I think the hardest part with this season is, yes, they have to tank, and it's going to be hard competition because they've almost got triple the wins of some of the bad teams. But there's also not much else. I don't know what else they're going to collectively play for. Desmond Bain and Jaren Jackson already got their 25 games to show what they could do as the primary offense, and it wasn't very good. We don't really need to investigate that further. We kind of know who they are. Are there some role players that you can give a bit more spotlight to and see what they can do? Maybe. If I were their GM and I'm trying to be productive and constructive and not waste another 40 games or just coasting by, is there expiring contracts? Is there an asset that you can get from another team that you can trial for 40 games and see what we're doing. So it instantly comes to mind here, but we just saw Marvin Bagley go to the Wizards. Is this a like, hey, do you want to trade for like Wiseman and see if he can be good for 40 games? Because they,
No.
what I'm saying, no. The answer would be no. But is there a young player who's buried on a bench somewhere that you could chuck chuck 2 draft picks at, or chuck one of their expiring contracts at, get back, let him play 30 minutes a game, and see if he actually has any form of talent? Because otherwise, I don't know what they do. They're going to twiddle their thumbs for 40 games here. Do you play people, or what's the point? You're not going to win anyway. You don't want them to get injured. Are we building chemistry? Well, we can't build chemistry because our core guy, who when he came back, they went on a 9-3 run, is clearly the focal point. Like, that's the issue that Memphis are facing. They are too deep into the season to commit to any one thing, but they've really got no reason to do anything but tank. But even tanking, like, even the draft's not strong enough. So are they just gaining a draft pick to then flip? Like, they have the potential to be good next season. I just wonder how they're going to handle this present season, because it's a very interesting circumstance.
I think there's talent in any draft, but I think it's not a deep class. Yeah, I think that's the situation, and there's a lot of question marks with the names in this upcoming draft that they're going to need to do their research. That said, it might be not a bad thing that, look, they're not going to get the top pick unless somehow these lottery odds and ping pong balls go their way in that sense, right? That's the reality. There's some teams that are woeful this year that will end up with the top 3 chances. But the reality here is that if they do get a top 5 pick and they nail the pick, yeah, like any club, let's be clear, all right? They nail the pick, all right. Next season, like I said, they're going to be really good. And like you said, this year, they just got to write it off. They got to find, do they have any other talent there? I was really surprised they let go of Kenny Lofton Jr. I was a huge fan of his. Where's he gone now? The Sixers, I think. And I don't think he's broken the rotation there yet either. But look, obviously he had limitations to his game too. But he was definitely an impactful player. He feels like a kid now that now you're tanking this season. You throw him out there, and then you can see what you can do or not do, or maybe even flip him for the asset. But they literally just cut him loose.
A very interesting one. Obviously has that monster like 40 and 20 game or something right at the end of the season, and then gets dropped. Could be a case of something going on in the background, or could just be an issue of the fact that I've just put up his stats, but maybe the fact that he's 6'6", but just, almost got the Glenn Davis sort of build, and maybe that just doesn't work in the modern era. I'm not too sure. But yeah, they need to either tap into the G League affiliate, and they need to find something to trial and tinker with, because it's mutually beneficial. They're going to avoid having the worst record. Like, I think Detroit's motivation is to be a little bit better because they want to avoid being the worst team in NBA history, whereas Memphis have already surpassed that. So they could drop 40 games in a row, hypothetically, and still potentially be better than 3 of the teams in the bottom. So, yeah, tough break, Memphis fans. It clears the logjam of the West a little bit, but definitely not, and also like bad for the league, because I think Ja's return, I think we all moved on collectively from the suspension. We didn't really talk about it anymore, and he was already producing pretty phenomenal play and highlights, which you're clearly missing. So
I
that's a bit
miss
of a
Ja. I miss Dame. I don't miss Jordan Poole. What do you want to talk about Jordan Poole for?
No, so the Jordan Poole interest here, so many fascinating stats come out, right? Like worst player in the league based off usage and box score, etc. And it got me thinking a little bit about Jordan Poole, and obviously all this Draymond stuff, and how maybe Jordan Poole's a victim of a Draymond Green incident, and we wouldn't take his side now, knowing what we know. But I was looking at Jordan Poole saying, is he the luckiest, like, right place, right time player of all time? So I'll help explain this a little bit. Ends up being, a deep draft pick
Mm, mm,
on, a dynasty,
mm.
and somehow, just gets to dominate the G League and chuck up a lot of shots, and then gets into the rotation of a team that eventually goes on to win the championship, in which he is a core contributor of. And then he gets a fat bag, he gets a fat stacks, he gets loaded, and then he just gets sent off into obscurity. And uh, if not for being on the Wizards, surely there would be, like, if he was on the Warriors right now with this box score, if he was on the Lakers or Philadelphia or New York, he could not be hiding from the, like, just absolute dredges that he is playing in. And a part of me looks at it and says, well, he's won an NBA championship and he didn't ride the bench for it. He actually was like the second best player in a couple of those games, or the best player at certain points. And he's making hundreds of millions of dollars. And he basically has to go out and treat it like a G grade men's game on a Thursday night, in which, like, hey, I'm just happy to have a run and chuck out some shots. So do you think he's the luckiest right place, right time sort of player that gets the championship, gets the bag, and gets to kind of coast being the worst player in the league?
It's funny what you're talking, and I love this little sort of take here. I did a bit of Googling here. So, firstly, how many rings does Jordan Poole have? Do you know that one on the top of your head?
There's one.
One, yeah. So, there was another name that popped in head. So, I Googled it here, and I was searching basically how many championships does Patrick McGaw have? Remember that kid? Remember that
Yep.
kid? Yeah, he was a Golden State's kid too. That was he drafted by the Warriors? Let me just bring that up. But he was obviously at the Warriors for the two championships. Then he left, played in Cleveland for a season, then went to Toronto and was on that team that won another championship against the Warriors. So he's got 3 rings. He's 3 rings now and out of the league, obviously. And that feels extremely lucky too. So maybe he didn't get his payday. Maybe that's a little catch there, right? He didn't get his
Yeah.
payday. He didn't get his payday, but he got his 3 rings. And there's just so much. There's just fortunate timing, right? You could also say things like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. They got their rings as well. Coming into the league as young players and rookies in that sense, or first or second year players in that sense, that they experienced championships very early in their careers, and you would think these guys could carve out careers somewhere else if they left the Warriors, or even if they stayed at the Warriors. So they're going to be in the league for a while. But they're now looking for their money when that comes around, when their contract is up for that big contract, right? So look, Jordan Poole's definitely the poster boy for that. But there potentially could be other sort of people that fit that category. I'd say definitely from the Warriors sort of squad as well.
But this is the shame. Hopefully this is the one video that gets some user engagement, because I'm really curious. It's like looking at the criteria here: win a championship, be a vocal or focal point of winning that championship. Don't just ride the bench. Don't just be like the 10th man, get some minutes in garbage time. Like actually hit some big shots, win a quarter, those kind of things, and then get a fat payday. Like, I was thinking like other players that popped in my head. I was like Jeremy Lin, right? Ends up on that Toronto squad as well. Has his Lin sanity and that, but he never made over 100 million, and he wasn't playing on that. Like, it's actually quite a hard list to be on, where you get all three: the ring, the impact, and the money, and then you just get to like skate on by over in the District of Columbia or whatever it is on their city jersey. Like, he's not even the best player on the Wizards. Like,
Well, did we
who
did
would have
we did we
thought?
truly expect him to be the best player on the Wizards? Like who
I think there was a collective agreement
that he would be
that
the best player on the Wizards? I don't know if I
um
ever bought into that. Like maybe there were people out there that thought that. We said from the day one that the Wizards are woeful and going to be woeful, and they are woeful. I
that,
think
that
that
age that's aging well.
but look, Jordan Poole probably it's illustrated now that I think if you put him on what if you put him to the Lakers? The Lakers need shooting. The Lakers need shooting. Yeah, and if he was no longer the focal point here, he's a guy that can shoot. He could shoot when he was in the Warriors, and he wasn't the number one, number two option there. All right, and there's other options out there. Don't get me wrong. All right, there's other options the Lakers could chase that are shooters that they clearly seem like they're lacking at the moment to spread around LeBron, who's injured now, and AD. But I think it's just clear he's not a first option. He's probably like a fourth option at best. Okay, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. You need 5 options on the floor.
I think I'm going to do some quick math for you. Try to keep up here. Kyle Kuzma is their best player,
Okay.
and he was the third best player on the Lakers team when they won. You could make a case and say
Yeah, he was a
fourth.
young Kyle Kuzma though, right? That's
Well, he's
important.
not,
You
but
got
he's
that's
not young
important.
because he's an old rookie. So, like, I'm pretty sure he's already 27, 28. Like, he's already in his prime. And then you've got Jordan Poole, who was potentially the second best player at one point on the Warriors, not as in overall, but for a game or two in the finals. You would kind of figure that they would be almost peers, but the difference between the two of them is actually quite large. I think ultimately what this is, I remember there was one person who commented on our Wizards take, and this is for you, because this is probably the most anyone's going to talk about the Wizards positively, or at least not negatively. We kind of kept it neutral at some point.
Well, Look, I don't know. I feel like we've spent already enough energy talking about the Wizards here. Really, I don't know. There's while we are on that topic though, what do you reckon of the kid? What's his name? Denny? Is it Denny?
Denny
Advija.
Advija.
Yeah, I actually was looking at some stats due to fantasy as we always do, right? Each week we're trying to figure out who can maybe help our rosters that little bit extra, that extra 2%, right? And he's having a bit of a hot patch at the moment. I don't know if someone has grabbed him, or maybe it's a different league that someone has grabbed him recently. But it's quite nice to see actually that he's playing reasonable basketball. He was obviously a lottery pick a couple years ago, and look, I don't know about you, man, but it's always there's a level of disappointment. I don't know whether you're a hater or not, but there's a level of disappointment when lottery picks just simply flame out. And and I think when they actually can carve out some sort of career, you got to feel good about that. So I don't know. It's good that he's like clearly on the radar now, and it looks like he can actually play ball.
Well, I mean, I think it's ignorant to think anyone who's in the NBA can't play ball. It's just figuring out where you play ball, right? So it's what role you fulfill. Because ultimately, all these guys came to the league probably dominating their respective leagues, and then there's a pecking order that gets established. And for him, he's come across. So what is the role that he can fulfill? And the hard part is on a good team, does he get a run? Right? Because he's playing on one of the worst teams in the league. Of course, like theoretically, anyone should be able to look good when, hey, we've got to take 90 to 100 shots in a game. And I don't know if you've looked around the locker room, but hey, Denny, you might as well take 15 of them. Let's see what you can do. Like, I'm not going to put too much stock in that. But you know what? Good mindset of a GM who's looking at these low teams. I think these low teams should be sellers. Like not doing a trade deadline talk because we'll get a chance to do that in about a month's time when it's all said and done. But there are 5 teams that are just like surely don't have more than 1 or 2 assets. Everyone should be up for sale, and other teams should be looking at them trying to figure out, hey, can we salvage it? You've got Bogdanovich on Detroit. Clearly, he would be good on a good team. Someone should be trying to make an offer towards that. Utah, obviously surging lately, but they've got a collection of talent just there. Can you pry Jordan Poole away? Can you pry Kyle Kuzma away? Like there are still good players on these teams, but you know, got to do something.
I think it's all got to do with like numbers, right? You got to line up those contracts, and it's got to work for your numbers, not only from a salary cap, from a tax perspective as well. How much do you actually want to pay for your team that's probably not going to win a championship? Yeah, if you knew you're going to win, then you spend anything you can, right? For these owners out there, the billionaires, yeah. But at the end of the day, there's still a level of reality of money there that there's so many question marks on is it worth sort of spending that sort of cash? That said, obviously, are the Lakers going to make a move here? Who's going to end up in Lakerland? What's your bet right now? What's your gut feeling? And that said, how about the Warriors? Are
Uh,
the Warriors going to actually trade a core player away? Because that's what they're going to have to do here, right? Wiggins, Thompson, Draymond. Are these guys actually being seriously being traded on being shopped around? I don't know. It feels a little bit of
Well, I
craziness,
was
really.
hearing this. I was hearing kind of a statistic saying that like free agency is basically faded, right? So teams don't want their players leaving in free agency. They want to make sure that they get something for them. And then there's all these under the table deals as I'll trade for you even though that you're expiring and you'll be a free agent next season because we're going to one up you like straight away, and we've all mutually agreed on that. So if you look at some teams, I think DeMar DeRozan from the Bulls is my pick for the Lakers because he isn't expiring and the Lakers never want to commit to anything beyond a season. So I think the Lakers season is going to legitimately parallel last season, in which, right now their record's very similar to what it was with Westbrook, and it's clearly not working. And we get to point the blame at everyone, and then we'll fire Darvin Ham, or we'll do a trade, or both, and then they might make a playoff push, and then that'll be how their season ends yet again.
I love that call. I love that call. Which sort of leads into this all-star sort of period, right? You had an all-star take.
Yeah, so look, I am piggybacking on a take that I've heard from JJ Redick, but I legitimately, um, I subscribe to it. I think the rosters should be 15 players. Uh, he's rationale behind it is when the 12 players were originally instilled, the league was substantially smaller. So the percentage of the league that was eligible to be an all-star was like sitting around, I think, 15 or 18%.
Mm.
And now to make an all-star, it's far more lucrative due to the fact that you've got 450 players opposed to, I believe, the 200 that it was.
Mm.
So it's substantially harder to be an all-star in the present day. And I don't know about you, but I was starting to think about all-star selections because we'll probably do our picks in a couple of weeks. And I've even heard other people debating it. There are significant snubs this year that, every year we talk about snubs. Every year we talk about snubs. But I think this year especially, it's going to be probably one of the harder years to do it.
I feel there's a few layers here, man. From a surface level, I'm I'm not going to disagree that having 15 roster spots for each All-Star team going now back to the East-West format is a bad thing. Okay, I'm not disputing that at all. Okay, from a fan's perspective, simply going, oh, more All-Stars, get to sort of share the love there in a sense, not a bad thing. Okay, but to be objective here, all right, there's a few points as far as I'm concerned. One, an All-Star is an achievement. So therefore, limiting that achievement is really important. Yeah, the next thing you want to go, hey, let's give it an MVP for each, division or something like that, right? It then dilutes the whole sort of value of that sort of achievement for a player in that sense. So there are 12 spots on each conference right now. You either make your 12 spots or you don't. Yeah, at some point there has to be a cutoff line there, where you draw the line in the sand there. That said, at the same time, from an All-Stars perspective, you already sometimes go at the All-Star games. You don't see some of these guys that are all superstars and highly talented players having great seasons. That's why they made the team. They're not getting minutes. It's hard enough to play 12 players minutes, let alone 15. Yeah, and you want when your favorite player makes the All-Star team, you probably want to see him out there more often than not. That said, of course, the coach is going to make decisions in that sense that probably ruin your plans there if you're that sort of second tier star or that first time All-Star that's not a starter. Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah, if you're not a starter and you're that second tier All-Star on your first sort of All-Star appearance, you're generally getting less than 10 minutes, probably in that game. All right, but going 15 deep, that's even less minutes there to share around. Yeah, the game is only so long, and already rotations. You can only go like 10 deep, let alone 12 deep, let alone 15 deep. Yeah, and at the end of the day, the snubs here, I think that you're alluding to, has to come back to the increased pace in 2024 and how the game is played now compared to how it used to be played. Right now, if you time machine back 10 years, yeah, and you looked at the stats right now, you'd go, oh my God, yeah, Kyle Kuzma, he's a superstar. Yeah. Wow, look at his stats, right? He's probably like, I had his table out just before, right? But, he's like, his stats look like they're Charles Barkley stats or something crazy like that, right? But that's the different era. It's a different era. Now, there's so many players averaging 20 plus points. There's even more players averaging 30 plus points. All right, what's the pace? Okay, what's the pace? And how have the rule changes now affected the game? Now they're scoring 140, 150 points a game. All right, I think that's the part where now you need to take another look under the sort of fine microscope of who is actually talented and great versus those that have inflated stats in today's era.
But I think it's also, rewarding winning and then roles of winners. So you look at the Clippers, for example, and you've got three impactful players on that team. I'm not saying all three of them are all-stars, but there's three there. You look at Boston, and there's a strong case that there's potentially the starting five deserves it. You look at Phoenix
Boston
and
starting
Kevin
five
Durant.
deserves all to be all-stars. Is that what you're trying to make
No, what I'm trying to say is that there's conversations you can have around all these players, right? And then you look at so the guard situation in the East is a really easy one, right? So you've got Tyrese Maxey, you got Jalen Brunson, you got Damian Lillard, you got Trae Young, and you got Tyrese Halliburton, right? So you got five guards to pick. When you reference that there's 12 spots and there's got to be a lucrative nature of it, the issue is it's not 12 spots, right? If I'm Tyrese Halliburton, I don't have 12 eligible
it's also
positions.
positional, yeah, I get
I
you.
have to fill the guard spot. So actually, my chance of making the All-Star team as a guard
Yeah,
isn't 1 in 12 or
yep,
1 in 450. It's
yep.
I have to fit into a guard slot. And so having the three on the bench, the additional three, I get your minutes thing, but let's be honest, let's go through like rosters. Every year there's an injury replacement. Well, maybe there's just no more injury replacements because you just use the guys that were already on your bench. Because I think every season there's always one. There's always one, if not two. Like last season, I think there was two or three right at the end. That's how Drew Holiday has his only All-Star appearance, and Mike Conley. So I think there's merit to that. And then there's tiers to it as well, right? So maybe that's where we start to inflate the All-Star MVP and we start to inflate the All-Star numbers, because you can't have those accolades unless you're actually good. So yeah, you might have made the All-Star team once and you rode the bench for all but 5 minutes of it, but you're not in Westbrook's league or Kobe's league or LeBron's league, because they're the ones that hold the trophy at the end. They're the ones that have the record.
I feel like, and I obviously haven't listened to J.O. Reddick's take, but I have heard this take before. It's a conversation that comes up at this time of the year every single year, especially probably in the last 5 years, where probably here's another, probably, we're probably now going into that territory where it's not necessarily basketball, right? We're being politically freaking correct. Isn't that what it is? Let's go share the love. It was 12 spots is not love. Let's make it 15. Why not make it 16? Like, seriously, there's so much talent. Let's make it 18. Like, what? That's what it feels like a little bit. And there's always going to be those guys that want to stand up and bat for that sort of criteria. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. I'm okay with 12, man. You clearly got to vote for 15.
I think I think when we do our picks in a couple of weeks, maybe
There'll be
maybe
snubs.
you'll
There'll be
come
some
around and
names
go,
that we just can't put on that list. It is what it is,
yeah,
man. You got to draw a line somewhere. You draw it at 15, number 16 is a snub. Yeah, you draw it at 12, number 13 is a snub. That's just the reality of numbers.
I think I think there's a lot of deserving players this season that are going to miss out. I think,
Like
you know,
every season.
this time's different. I feel like
we
you're stuck in the
we
past,
we can
man. You
we
know
can
what I
make
mean?
three more. We could make three more players happier from each conference because we're giving three more spots, right? So it's like let's just give out three more consolation medals because you guys aren't going to play any minutes anyway. But hey, let's just make you guys an all-star so you get paid more. Is that what it is? So you can put that on your resume? Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm pro player, man. You sound like you're pro GM, so that's all good.
I feel like I gotta sometimes be the voice of reason for both balances. Sometimes isn't that what it is?
Maybe
Um,
I definitely would have changed the league 7 times over now if I was commissioner. So
Whatever works
yeah,
for the players, right? Is that your mantra?
that whatever keeps everyone playing ball happy.
Which probably leads to this. Actually, ties in well with this next one. If whatever keeps everyone playing ball happy, and I sent you this week a little link on load management, man, and I think you had a bit of a read there. And then you play. I don't know about you, man. I thought about you. I was like, load management, man. Load management would not have saved your knees. Is that what this article is trying to say? Man, you should have just played more basketball. I don't know. It wasn't you should have played less basketball. You should have played more basketball. It made no difference. But look, I don't know. First, I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts on this article when you read it first.
I think one thing that I did when I hurt my knees is I obviously like read into like what went wrong, right? So why did my ACL rupture? And the biomechanics behind it is essentially your muscles don't fire and all of the force or all of the energy goes straight to your ligaments and they're not built to withstand that energy. So in my case, really boring explanation, but basically my foot plants and my quadriceps muscle and my calf muscle and that don't do what they're supposed to do or don't take enough of the force. And so all of it goes straight to the knee can't
So
handle it
it's
and it
technique.
hurts.
It's technique.
So there's definitely some merit to some people are more predisposed towards injuries in the first place, right? So, you might have
So that's
a
genetics.
certain
You're
gait.
basically saying
Yep.
genetics then. Yeah. Yep.
Essentially,
Got it.
yeah,
Yep.
you might have a gait, you might have an inflection on your foot or something like that that makes you more prone to these things, right? We look at the Ball brothers, for example. Clearly, something's wrong with their lower limbs, right? And that's 2 out of 3 of them. And if Leangelo was in the league longer, does he also have the exact same issues as well? It's hard to know. They are freak accidents for some people, but then other people can trace it back. So, for example, my dad's side, we all have bad left knees, right? It is just a common thing. Some have had knee replacements, knee recos, or meniscus tears, whatever it may be, but they all have a left knee injury. And that's what started off mine. And then I did the right one because statistically speaking, if you do one, you're 33% more likely to do the other because of compensation or just weakening,
Yep.
etc. So when you look at these players, they have the best conditioning, the best training, the best diet, like all of those things come into play. But it can be a freak accident. Sean Livingston comes to mind. I don't think genetics played a factor in that. I think that's just the weirdest freak accident that can happen. But I wouldn't say load management is the issue. I would say it's a scheduling issue. I would still be adamant that if your muscles don't fire properly, it can be due to fatigue, but it's not due to fatigue because you ran around for 40 minutes 2 days ago. It's because you ran around for 40 minutes 2 days ago, but your flight didn't get in till 2 a.m. this morning, and then you didn't sleep until 3. You woke up at 5 or 6 and you're running on 3 hours sleep, and then you went to go play basketball in a highly competitive environment. That's the issue that I think the league's facing, right? So the Minnesota game comes to mind. Minnesota kept it really close and competitive with Boston, despite the fact that they came in to Boston at 1 a.m. in the morning. And you've flown on planes before. When you arrive somewhere from a plane, you don't end up in your bed for a big chunk of time after that, unless you're fortunately right next to the airport and you can fall asleep in 5 minutes. So I think that's a bigger impact on the players than them playing 82 games or them having games, 5 games in 6 nights or anything like that. It's sincerely travel. It's the travel that I think is causing a lot of the injuries.
Is it when you read this article? I can tell when I read this article, I was I was I wouldn't say surprised, but I felt I don't know what the right word here. I don't even know if the right word is like skeptical. I don't know. I don't even know if I agree with it to an entirety. I'm not trying to say that I'm a sports scientist or I've done any sort of level of research into this that anyone else has done in that sense. But how this article was put forth, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you had a different take, is that load management is not an effective component to minimize players' injury. Is that basically what the research is trying to suggest here in this article?
Yeah, the article's basically trying to say is that there's no measurable impact from load management. So it might have a positive impact on, say, one player, but then it's not doing enough scientific. Like, data has to account for variability, right? And obviously with people and health and, all of them have it. Like, every team isn't equal. Every team has a different schedule. So each player could benefit from it or may not benefit from it. But basically, what the article wants to say overall is I cannot definitively say giving every single player in the league load management reduces injuries. It might help you, but it might not help them. Therefore, it cancels out.
So would you, if you took this, expanded it into, let's say, this layman terms here? Yeah, I'm no doctor or any scientist like that. Okay. And it's sort of taking what you were also referencing, like flying in late, not getting enough rest, and so on and so forth. The schedule is very, very busy. Yeah, it's a business, absolutely. Okay. That if a player flies from one city to another between two games, depending on how much time there is between games, they get to a game and they're tired before the game. Yeah, they're tired before the game because we all tired, right? Isn't that the reality? We're all humans. We're tired. Tomorrow I'm tired, or that day I had a big day, I'm tired, so on and so forth. Yeah, I wake up, I'm still a bit tired. Okay, I go to my coaching staff and the trainers there, and I say, hey, I'm not feeling great. I'm not feeling 100%. I'm really tired. I didn't sleep much last night. We just flew in, obviously, 4 a.m. Blah blah blah. Okay, that the decision there is that, well, you should rest. Don't play. You should rest. Yeah, because as we know, anyone that's tired, I go out there and I'm tired, I'm probably going to have an accident, well, higher risk of an accident. Okay, not necessarily an injury, but I guess I'm not an athlete. That's the point, right? If you ask me to use my power tools when I'm extremely tired, I'm probably going to, have a greater risk of having some severe accident with my power tools or something along those lines, right? But obviously, we're not athletes here, so we're not looking at injuries. But there's a high risk of an accident when you're tired, whether you're driving or power tools or even just doing calculations on a piece of paper that you're tired, you're making mistakes. Yeah, is that not a valid point that load management is effective to assist that?
Well, I think, like, I just skimmed the article again just to make sure I reminded myself of it. I think they're referencing more the single games, right? So let's say, for example, it's Thursday night in Minnesota. I don't have another game until Sunday, and I played on Monday. I'm just taking today off just for extra rest. I think they're referencing those standalone games as not being substantial for actually impacting it. And the other thing as well is that what is the intent of a league investigated survey like this, right? Knowing that the stance from the league about load management has not been favorable
Mm,
because it,
mm.
it is hurting the overall product. There is some credibility that you have to factor into that. In your reference to when you're tired, you make mistakes, I need you to imagine that when you're tired, your body doesn't optimize itself. And, when you think about it, I remember doing my knee. I had played 2 games back to back,
Mm.
right? So I had played 2 games back to back. So I was in my 76th minute of consecutive basketball, right?
Yep.
Because you're fanatic at that point. And to say that fatigue couldn't have been at play there would be quite, like, idiotic, because how much hydration have I had? How much is my fuel, my food source carrying me at that point? How was my sleep the night before? And then that's not factoring the fact that as a local player, we have work in the day. So I've already been at work all day, and now I'm playing 2 games back to back, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and I've been up for 14, 16 hours. You know, shock horror, then I end up hurting myself. For these players as well, yes, it is their job to play basketball, and that's all they do. But I cannot overstate. I think those travel things really hurt them. I think there should be a flat out rule that like you must have at least like 36 hours between arriving in a city and playing a game. I don't know how you pull that off schedule wise, but
It's the
yeah,
reality
yeah.
is it's not possible. I think that's the business side of it once again, isn't it? That's the it's all about the players, Nick, right?
Oh, I mean, look, that's no, but I think the hard part here is the league probably does need to budge a little bit because the league wants their players to be playing,
Yeah, but if there's
and
no games, there's no money. You got to play your games to make the money. So for the more games you play, the more money you make. Hell, if they could
you
play
know what?
182 games, they probably would. But no one's going to sign up for that.
Look, I think based off how I have to structure my fantasy rosters sometimes, maybe there's already enough games on that day. We don't need one extra. Maybe they can have the day break. You know what
Hey,
I
look,
mean?
when you're the owner and you know when your venue is lighting up that night and your fans are coming in the door and they're giving you this, I don't think you're sort of going, hey man, have another 36 hours. That's another day and a half less of revenue coming through the doors. I think that's the reality there, man. But
I don't
hey,
know
look.
if I'm able to talk about. I don't know if I'm able to talk about the cynicism of capitalism when we're talking about basketball right now. I just want to believe that everyone's going out there trying their best to win a championship, and
Well, is that where you're at, man? You got 7 minutes to tell us about your continued pursuits in your fantasy championship aspirations, which took a bit of a hit this week, man. What's happening, man?
so I think it finally happened. Like number one, I understand what it's like to be an opponent of mine most weeks. Because I got smacked 7-2. I couldn't catch up. Percentages, I just got shot out of the gym. This guy really killed it.
Mm-mm.
I was trying to make a push in rebounds, but couldn't pull it off. And I actually lost in points, which is pretty rare now. Um, Tried to do some deep diving into it. Maybe you sold me a lemon and Luca. I don't know.
Oh, oh,
Um,
oh, whoa, 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 whoa! Let's go back one step there, man. I sold you a lemon in Luca, what? Because he was injured, because he missed a game or two, and suddenly that threw your whole thing out. You
Nah,
know.
look, I think the biggest issue this week, I finally got bitten by the injury bug. So Wemby currently is on a back-to-back restriction.
Yep.
So he missed 2 games this week due to that. In the 2 games that he played, he was phenomenal, but that
Missing
is something moving
Tyrese, right?
forward.
Tyrese hurts
That's
you.
yeah, Tyrese obviously being out with a grade 1 sprain, and he had 4 games this week, so he probably would have given me about 100 more points and a lot more assists, which admittedly I didn't need this week. But you do one on that front. Luca being out for a little bit of time as well.
Hey, but you got
You know,
Kyrie.
so,
Hey, you're not complaining. You got Kyrie. Wasn't that a good
no,
pickup?
Kyrie
And
was
I
great as
gave you
well.
Kyrie too. He was a free gift on the waiver wire, man.
Yeah, well, that is what it is. I think I think also, as much as I want to like look at my roster and then say, oh, I need to do something different, I'm still top. Like I'm still top of my conference, and I'll hold on to that even if I had another 2 weeks like that.
True,
I can
true.
afford it, and it is one of those weeks where you got to look at it and say, I feel like if Wemby played all his games, Luca played all his games, and Tyrese played all his games, I'm not sitting here saying I lost 7-2. So
Well, it was an interesting week, man. Obviously, with six teams, it's three matchups per week. I think every underdog, if I recall correctly, won this week. Yeah, and which now has pushed the standings to really have a nice sort of epic last few weeks or so leading into finals and playoffs and finals sort of sense. Obviously in the East Division where I'm in, 3.5 games in it, and I'm coming last, but I'll take 3.5 games any day. And the next 2 weeks. Here's the telling point, right? The next 2 weeks I'm playing second and first in my conference here. So I guess it's my chance here if I can pick up a couple of W's. It wouldn't hurt me to just close that gap even further. And for your division, obviously, like you said, man, you're killing it right now. You're still killing it. Good on you, man. It's for you to have to close it, right? You have to close it, right? That's your key, man. If you somehow, here's the catch, man, right now, for I'm recording, right? If you somehow do not win Yeah, if you somehow do not win this year, all right, you're gonna have to really deep dive that significantly because somehow you got Luka gifted to you. You had Wemby and Tyrese Halliburton had this crazy 2020 year. Who does that, right? But somehow the wheels fell off at the end, man. I don't know. I feel like you're the guy that goes out there and smashing it, but then now the pressure's on you, man, to have to get this job finished. I don't know, man. What do you think?
I don't feel a lot of pressure. Ultimately, you're not in control of it. I made one move this week, which was to get rid of Kuzma for Aaron
Yeah, I
Gordon.
saw
I
that.
did
What the hell
it.
was that? Can you give me any logic to that? That didn't even make sense, but whatever, man. I was like, sure.
So Kuzma specifically really only gave me points and bad shooting. That's what he was consistently giving. He had a
What,
really good
what
week,
does Gordon give you?
ironically.
What does Aaron Gordon give you?
Aaron Gordon gives me everything else. So he gives me, according to averages, he gives me about 3.5 to 4 more rebounds, which is an area that I need to slightly improve in. He'll give me about 5 points less, but he's going to give it to me on significantly better shooting. And he'll also give me a little bit more in the assists, steals, and blocks category. So basically, what I did was I subtracted some points, knowing that I can score 1,000 points in a week. And, as I said, ironically, though, Wizards actually won a game or two, and Kuzma had like 20 and 10 like 3 times. So
Well,
it
didn't we
didn't
just
age
allude to
well
the
in the end.
Kyle Kuzma is the best player on the Wizards team?
Yeah,
But
but that's not saying much. That's a low bar.
but ironically, that you also made a trade with your housemate. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, it's a lot easier to get in contact
So
with
so
Brienne
what was the
when.
conversation at the dinner table that Kyle Kuzma he's the best player on the Wizards team. Let's make a trade for the fourth option on the Nuggets team.
No, look, I think you talked about diversifying my portfolio, so that's what I was doing. Um, No, I think you're putting a lot of stock in Kuzma as someone who has looked at his box scores consistently. Probably, you know what? It'd be interesting to get your take. How do you feel about Chet as you've been a consistent owner? Are you seeing those? He has a really huge game, wow, and then like just pretty steady and gives you like
I
13 and
love Chet,
5.
man. I love Chet. I should have just paid more for him at draft day. But no, look, I love Chet. I feel you a little bit harsh on him, man. He's still a rookie, right? And yeah, sure, he has some inconsistent games. He's probably not a great rebounder. Yeah, he's probably sort of averages 7, 8 rebounds a game versus like double digits. That said, obviously, I'm not too fussed about that, and that was expected from my perspective. I obviously have Gobert, I have Sabonis, I have AD. These guys are all averaging, double-digit rebounds there in that sense. But for me, and let's be honest here, man, and look, we'll see how this plays out, right? We'll see how this plays out. I'm obviously gearing up to play you first round of the finals, and there's a level of, subtractions from you as an addition from me by default already. So, hey, so look, we'll see how this shakes out, man. Like, hey, maybe Tyrese Halliburton's gonna be injured a little bit longer. Maybe Lucas Quad's a little bit more sore,
It's
and I
yeah.
don't know.
Honestly,
We'll
man,
see. We'll see how it shakes out. I don't know, man.
who would have thought holding on to Lamelo has aged so well? Maybe I should have taken that Lamelo. I should have taken that Tyrese trade right before he got hurt.
Anyway, look, it feels like that's a bit of a wrap this week, but hopefully you feel better soon, and we're back at it next week, hey?